So very good morning and very good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. My name is Ranganathan. You can call me as Ray. So just a quick check. May I know where you're connecting from? I see quite a number of you in the session, 86 of you. Welcome to the Azure Data Platform Introduction session. And it's good to have all of you here. I see someone, Thomas from Nepal. We have quite a number from Philippines as well. Hi, Ham. Welcome. Okay, Abelincia from Philippines as well. Good morning. I think for you too, it will be good afternoon now, right? So glad to have you here. So we have Jahidul from Bangladesh. Yes, welcome. Sri Lanka, Konara. Yes, Charan Wood from Thailand. Okay, so great to have all of you here. So allow me to introduce myself once again. My name is Ranganathan. You can call me as Ray, and I'm basically the MCT regional lead um, for this region as well. Now, or from Malaysia, right? So I'm from Malaysia. So there's a question about attendance. I think Suraj has already addressed just now. Once you stay to the end of the session, I think they will take note of your attendance and provide you the participation certification. Okay, so we have Subhash as well. Okay, good morning. Right, so we have quite a number of you are joining us today. And let's move on to the agenda that we have available for you today. Just to let you know that this is going to be an introductory session, so we may not go much into the details of the implementation, but just to get you started on the Azure Data Services. Okay, and our focus will be on these two Azure Data Services, which is Storage Account and Data Lake. Storage Account and Data Lake. And we have a an introduction of how this will be. Okay, introduction of what will be the content, and also what is the different type of storages that you may be dealing with, namely blob, table, queue, file, and disk. And we'll look at some use cases. Okay, so this is what we have available for you today, this 1 hour. So let's look at how we can best leverage on this. So first thing you need to understand is in terms of the Azure Data Services itself. Okay, so later I'll be sharing the slide deck with Surak so that he can send to you all or make that available as a link in the YouTube channel when they post this video so that you can have access to it. Yeah, so not to worry. There will be a sharing, and that will be done later by Surak. And I'm still seeing some concerns about certificate of participation. I think Surak has mentioned you will get it if you stay to the end of the session. Okay, so let's continue. So first and foremost, we need to look at what Azure Data Services are made available for you, and which will be the one that will be the best suited for your needs. Okay, so you have Azure Data Services. You have many different Azure Data Services made available as well. We need to look at which of it is going to be the most appropriate one. So there are a lot of different storage requirements, and which of these storage requirements you're going to use, you're going to meet, and which of these you're going to use will depend on your use cases. So just to let you know, I will be having a lot of these references shown along the way so that you can continue your learning adventure, right? Continue the learning adventure. And you can explore what are the available options that you have available. So one of the first things that we're going to look at is in terms of what are the type of storages available? When are you going to make use of, let's say, Azure storage as compared to Azure Data Lake, right? And the different type of storages that you will commonly come across in your environment in terms of the usage. For example, you have blob storage, file storage, table, and you also have queue and disk that can be used within the Azure storage account. So we need to know which of these is going to be suitable for your requirement. So you have Azure storage account, which will be the first one that you will be creating as part of your requirement. And in most cases, as a developer, if you're going to have certain storage requirements made available for your application, this will be one of the first thing that you will create. Okay, so Azure Storage account will be one of the first ones that you would create. Okay, let me show you my Azure platform. And just to let you know, if you intend to create an Azure Storage account, what you need to do is you need to go to Create and look for Storage account. Okay, so you will notice that there is a storage account option made available here. And if you notice, it will say that it is going to cover blobs, tables, queues, files, and data lake Gen 2. Okay, so blob, tables, queues, files, and data lake Gen 2. So if you're going to create, then you go on to create the storage account by means of choosing your subscription and your resource group that you're going to use. And within this, you will specify a, sorry, are you all able to see the screen? I have Habib here mentioned he couldn't see the screen.
I think it's visible for me, at least.
Visible, huh? Okay, okay. All right. Okay, thank you for the confirmation. So let's proceed. Yeah, so Habib, maybe you want to log out and log in again, just in case. For Suraj Jasol, not visible. Okay. Suraj, can you attend to that, please? Two participants say who couldn't see the screen. So
Sure,
just
I'll
to
do that.
confirm. All right.
You can go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay. I'll go ahead. Yeah. Okay. So storage account, basically, you need to have a unique name for it. Yeah. Please ensure that the storage account that you're going to create, it is going to be unique, globally unique. The reason being that if you're using blob storage for the purpose of storing your images, your static website, etc., basically what you need, okay, what you need is the ability to have it accessible through HTTP, HTTPS, right? And make that available as a URL for you to gain access to that content. So you need to make this as unique as possible. So if it finds that that name is already in use, for example, if I were to put the Ray demo, which I already created, it will say the storage account name Ray demo is already taken. So you need to make sure this is going to be unique. I'm going to put it as Ray as a demo. And the next option would be to choose, for example, which of that particular region you want to create this in. So I'm going to quickly create this in Asia Pacific, Southeast Asia. And then what am I going to use this for? So depending on your use case, okay, depending on your use case, you can choose a standard or premium. So if you have low latency requirement for your application, you would create with premium performance. Or otherwise, if it's just going to be storage of data, simple data, probably you can opt for the standard performance level. Next, you will see redundancy. Okay, so redundancy here, basically, you will need to choose one of which is available for you here. You will notice that there is local redundancy, geo redundancy, zone, and also geo-zone redundant storage. Now, basically what it means is where are you going to replicate that data and make that available? Okay, the redundancy here is basically specifying where are you going to make that available um, as a replicated content. So you have local redundancy means within the same server. Geo redundancy, basically you're looking at, okay, geo redundancy, you're basically looking at the use of different region as a means to have that available, right? Different region as a means to have that available. Then you have road zone redundancy and then geo-zone redundant storage, which is basically within the same zones. So depends on which of this is applicable, best possible, you need to choose based on your application requirement. So for the demo purpose, I'm just going to go ahead with local redundant storage, but just to let you know that this is how you're going to have that available. So under the advanced, you will see security. This is where you can set in terms of whether you're going to allow access directly with the storage account key access. So these are all security concerns that you may want to address, or you want to ensure that it is in place. Whether you want to allow public access to the containers. So this will be the option that you will choose if, let's say, if you're going to have a what do you call a website, for example, where you want to make available some contents for viewing of the public access. Okay, so then you have the requirement of in terms of defining whether you want to support secure REST API operations, and then you move on to decide on the aspect of which TLS version that you're going to support. So you have 1 to 1.2. If you're not sure, just leave it at 1.2. And then what is the copy operations that you're going to allow? So this is also under security concern, which you're going to allow. Then you have data lake storage Gen 2. Now this is where the reason why I mentioned this is nothing but storage account with hierarchical namespace enabled. This is nothing but storage account with hierarchical namespace available, where it makes it to become Azure Data Lake. Okay, so if you look back, let me just go back here. If you intend to make this to become Azure Data Lake storage, where hierarchical namespace is supported, you just enable this one. It's just one click. Enable hierarchical namespace. Okay, so if you click on this, it becomes data lake Gen 2. Uncheck this, it becomes Azure Storage Account. Okay, so that's the one difference that I wanted to highlight here so that you are clear about it. Then you have all the individual settings for blob storage, what type of access tier that you're going to use. Okay, Ikram, there's a question. So what is the difference between geo redundancy and zone redundancy? Okay, so zone redundancy basically is going to be within the same region. So we have a few zones available. And what's going to happen here is it's going to replicate it to the different zone. So if you take, for example, the data center in Singapore, then within Singapore is going to replicate it within that zone, within that region itself. Okay. Then if you say geo redundancy, if you're in Singapore, you can choose which, it will choose the next closest region. For example, let's say Indonesia, or let's say Hong Kong, where it is going to have that copy of data available. Okay, Ikram, did that answer your question? It's not based on which continent, but which region we are creating our content in. Okay, so we have this one here, and then you can choose a different one. All right. Okay, so you choose which of these you're going to use. Then if you want to do big data analytics, if you want to do big data analytics, what you need to do is to enable data lake storage Gen 2 by enabling the hierarchical namespace. Okay, hierarchical namespace, and then it becomes possible for you to specify options related to hierarchical namespace, where you can use network file system enabled for the access. Okay, so you can specify in terms of access tier. So for development purpose or application purpose, usually it is frequently accessed. So in most cases, you will be using hot access. Okay. If you choose to have backups available in the storage, then you change it to cold. Usually for backups and data, archive data, you usually go for this one. But for application usage, you usually go for hot. Then you have settings that is pertaining to Azure files. Next settings inside here is more to the networking concern. Are you going to use it within your network itself, or on from a particular public access you're going to allow, or you want to only allow private access to this storage account? So again, this depends on your usage. If you're talking about web application where you need to have access to the images and so on, then you need to enable public access. Then if you're going to use it for internal usage, let's say for analysis purposes, then you will disable public access and make that available only for private access. Okay, so the network routing, you have two possible routing that you can use. Preferably you stick to Microsoft network routing, so it can leverage on the backbone for the purpose of backbone network for the Microsoft Azure, for the purpose of directing you to the connection. All right, then you have data protection, whether you want to provide some protection in terms of allowing deleted blobs to be recoverable. Okay, containers and file shares, where you can define whether you want to allow or disallow soft delete to be in place. So if you are looking at possibility of having to recover those deleted contents, then you can enable this. Otherwise, you can remove it. Okay. Something that you will notice is that if you're going to later convert a storage account to a let's say data lake for the purpose of changing the requirements of performance, you may need to disable these options first before prior to doing that, because usually data lake implementation does not actually support okay, does not actually support these soft delete options that is made available here. Okay, so just take note. So what will happen is, if let's say I enable hierarchical namespace, you may need to remove this option so that it can be done. So there's certain criteria if you're going to use hierarchical namespace enable or access. So here you have the contents in terms of encryption. So depending on your application, once again, do you need to use your own encryption keys or Microsoft managed encryption keys? To begin with, if you're not sure, just leave it at Microsoft managed keys. If need to, you can later make those changes and you can enable or disable support for other services as well, whether you want to allow customer managed keys to be in use. Okay, and last but not least, you have the tags. Usually I recommend you to put some information here regarding the um, owner, who's the stakeholder, who's the paymaster, what is this storage for, etc. before creating it. So in terms of creation, I just wanted to show you how to create, but let me just show you the content. Okay, I'm not sure why quite a number of you are having difficulty seeing the screen. If you do have, check the chat window, rejoin with the given link so that you can see the screen chat. Okay, sometimes you need to log out and log in. Okay, so I have two storage accounts created here. I have created Ray demo and Ray DL demo. And if you can guess, this is going to be data lake with hierarchical namespace created. This is without hierarchical namespace. Okay, so you have Ray demo. Okay, with hierarchical namespace disabled. Okay, so if you want to, you need to be able to upgrade. Okay, this option have been made available since last year, if I'm not mistaken, where you can actually change your storage account to become a data lake storage. Okay, and it will do validation in terms of the storage before allowing you to change. So some of the information that you'll see inside here is that you have this 4 different storage type. 4 different storage type. You have containers, file share, queue, and tables. These are the different file shares that you have available, with the containers being used for the purpose of having blob storage use, blob content used. Okay. Now, before I go into the details, just I wanted to show you the screen before we go into back to the slides. Yeah. So you have containers, file shares, okay, queue, and tables. Okay, so these are the 4 different type of content. Okay, 4 different type of data storage type that you can use within the storage account. And if you scroll further down, in order for you to access this content, in order for you to access the content from your application, you will either use the access key okay, so you have the access key that will be made available in two copies. One is the key 1 and key 2. Key 1 will be the one that you commonly use. If it is compromised, you will change it to key 2 and rotate the other key for usage. So if you need some access from your application, likely you are going to make use of this storage account name, which will be the unique name that you have provided, and a key value. Alternately, if you need to have a controlled access, that means you want to provide temporary access for your application team or developers to use this storage, then you can opt to make use of shared access signature. Okay, so you can make use of shared access signature for this purpose. And if you can specify what they are allowed or disallowed to do by checking and unchecking, and provide the start and end date for that particular shared access signature key to be used. So this will give you a controlled access of what they can or cannot do. So as a developer, I would strongly suggest that you use this instead of access key, because access key is how to say, it's going to be a bit more how to say, extensive in terms of the permissions given. You can do just about anything with the access key. So usually we don't recommend you to use that. Probably you want to use this. And as a administrator, if you're using data lake, okay, I can have individual controls to the folders made available with access control, identity access management. So we can say who can access, what they can access. You want to grant access to a particular role, grant access to the particular user. You can do that by means of specify, okay, what they can or cannot do inside this context. So in case if you're a developer, you need to access to this storage, you request from your administrator to give you access. So you need to provide or specify that you want to provide, you need that particular access available. Okay, so I still have some who are saying they couldn't watch. Please log out and log in again. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's affecting quite a number of you, but please log out and log in back, please. Right, next we have the type of storage that you're going to use. What will be the type of storage that will be good for you to use? So you want to be able to use either storage account or Azure Data Lake, depending on the scenarios. Okay, depending on the scenarios. Now, as I mentioned, later we'll be sharing with you. Okay, later we'll be sharing with you this slide. So don't worry about not capturing this information. Just pay attention to what I'm saying. Storage account data lake. So if you have hierarchical namespace enabled, okay, hierarchical namespace enabled, you're basically going to allow that individual directory level manipulation to take place. Okay, individual directory level content to be manipulated. So if you're using blob storage, for example, without hierarchical namespace, it is a flat, what we call as flat structure. Okay, flat structure. And basically what's going to happen here is it is going to enable you to access the individual content, but you won't be able to manage the whole contents inside a particular space. For example, if let's say you have 5,000 files in a folder, if I rename the folder, basically what's going to happen is if you're using a storage account, a normal blob storage account, blob storage, you need to copy and copy out and copy into that renamed folder that you have created. So if it is 5,000, it is going to be 5,000 copy and 5,000 paste that is going to take place. Okay. Compared to hierarchical namespace, where if I rename the directory, for example, it just maintains it as it is. It doesn't copy out the content to a newly created name. Okay, so that's one thing. If you need to keep contents like for data analytics purposes, data lake will be a better option because you can have contents organized in data sets. So you want to keep all your files in terms of those files meant for big data analysis made available. Those change tabs. Wait, okay, let me just try to unshare and share back again, just in case if that helps. Okay, so I'm sharing my whole screen. So hopefully that helps. Okay, so I'll maintain it this way. So if you're going to have images available, okay, images available that you're going to keep inside there, you do not need to make it available in data lake because images in most cases you're going to directly access through the URL, for example. So a flat hierarchy will be sufficient. Okay. If you're planning to do data analytics, okay, data analytics, basically what you need to do, okay, basically what you need to do is to have the data set made available in that folder, maybe in the form of specific formats of files like Avro, org, and so on. Basically, that will be much better for you to use data lake instead. Okay, I'm glad that worked fine. Sorry, probably when I shared just now, there was some issue, yeah. So I stopped and shared back again. All right. Then in terms of the storage itself, data lake storage can grow very well in terms of the content capacity. So you may want to use that and make that available, right? So you see which of that you're going to use. So blob storage in itself, okay, blob storage in itself supports all that required capabilities, okay, capabilities that is made available, okay, capabilities made available, and then you're going to have that. On top of that, you're going to have the ability for performance enhancement, a minute level security, and the ability to scale. Okay, so data lake gives you this advantage over the normal storage usage. So Speaking of the storage account, just now you saw there's blob table, queue, files, and also there's disk that's made available. And now this has been made into a different service altogether. But you have that ability to create the following 4 different types of storage account within it. Okay, 4 different types of storage account within it. Blob storage. Okay, blob storage is going to be the one that you will commonly use. Okay, that you will commonly use for the purpose of storing contents such as your uh, uh, data analytics content. So if you have HDFS file, you have org file uh, made available, basically you will put it into your data lake, into the blob storage, and make that available for your application. Table will be more for those key value representation that you will commonly use to represent data that seems like relational data, but it is just a single table, which quickly allows you to, store key value representation of data to be made available within it. Then you have queue. So queue is meant for you to support MSMQ protocol, right? Basically to allow you to use it as a messaging, for the purpose of messaging and making that available for your application. And the fourth one, files, excuse me, is basically meant for file share creation, which can be used if you need to share contents with your virtual machine, for example, a VM, and make that available um, throughout your network. You will consider using these files for that particular purpose. Okay, so these are some of the usages. Now, let me just quickly share with you. Probably I will do that now so that you can actually know where to get the contents from here. So look, I'll just have a quick share here. Let's copy all these things. Oh, I wanted to copy the whole thing. One moment. Sorry about that. There you go. So you have all that links made available for you to help you learn better. Okay, so let me just go back to the slide. Okay, so if you want to know more about when to make use of this blob storage, when you want to make use of file storage and table storage, as well as Azure Data Lake Gen 2, you can actually explore this particular site on Microsoft Learn. Okay, so I didn't want to reinvent the wheel by putting it all into the slides once again. So this is where you can get more information about the use of blob storage, the use of file, the use of queue, and the use of data lake. So if you're looking at blob storage, basically it has three possible type of blob that you can use. Namely, you have blob, page blob, okay, and append blob. Okay, so these are all basically going to be the type of storage that you're going to use. Okay, storage that you're going to use in the blob itself, the type of blob that you're going to use. So if you're going to keep very large objects, your backup files and etc., that doesn't change at a block level, that means it doesn't change. Okay. Basically, you can keep it inside blob. If you have those contents like your log file, where it needs to add on to the content, okay, you will make use of append blob. And then you have page blob, okay, page blob, which usually is used as a means to create disk storage for your virtual machines. Okay, so you can specify which of these you're going to use for the storage and when is it that you're going to use one over the other. So I encourage you to go through this link which I provided for you. The first one, explore storage for non-relational data, so that you are familiar with each of the different type of storage available. So if we look at Azure Data Lake Storage, okay, you will have hierarchical namespace enabled, meaning you are able to use it. Okay, you're able to use it. You can specify a directory and control access to the individual directory with access level control, right? ACL, access control list. So basically, you will be using this for support of analytic works, especially like Azure HD Insight, Azure Databricks, Azure Synapse Analytics, where the file will be hosted in the following context. Then you have Azure Files. Okay, so this is meant for sharing. That means you get a network file share context. Okay, network file share context of addressing that makes it available for you to share with both your PMs as well as on if need to by means of using the shared location. And Azure Tables, basically Azure Tables looks like relational data, but it is not. Okay, you have a key value pair representation. Key value pair representation. And using this, you will be able to gain access, okay, to the individual content by providing a unique partition key and row key, followed by one or more properties. But these properties need not be the same for each one of these. Okay, so unlike relational data where you need to make sure all the schemas are the same, for key value pairs, usually you do not do that. Okay, so that's the basically the different type of storage which you can look at. So to be able to perform the required setup, I provided you the second link there to the storage lab, which makes it possible for you to, okay, which makes it possible for you to explore, create the storage, and make use of the storage, uploading the content, changing the settings, and making that available for usage. Okay, so you can specify all the required content and then try to load the files in to just to test out and see, and then you can actually go on to configure blob storage, Azure files, and Azure tables. Okay, just a note, you need to have a workable Azure Pro subscription to make this work. Okay, right. So you need to make that particular storage be available. Lil Jan, you're most welcome. Okay. Next one that I want you to refer to is this one. Developer Guide to Azure. Okay, Developer Guide to Azure, which shows you how to actually connect to that particular data. So this particular document, which you can download from the link which I've given, if you look at page 69, it touches on that Azure storage and how you can make use of Azure storage within your application to support your Azure data analytics workload, etc. Within your application. So the developer guide to Azure, page 69 onwards, you will have contents touching on Azure storage usage. So I recommend that you go to download this document and make that available. And we can make use of that. Okay, right. So let me just quickly do that. All right. Okay, so later we will share the links again. Yeah, so someone's asking for the link. Later I'll show you. Now, the link to it is already shared. Okay, Andren, the link to it is already shared. Okay, so all this is going to be applicable for access to the portal, but then in most cases, you're going to access it through your application, right? So if you're planning to use it within your application, okay, I would recommend that you go through the sample files that is provided in this. So I'm using Python. So what I did was I looked at the Azure storage samples using V12 Python client libraries so that we can test out and see. Okay, we can test out and see. So you have quite a number of interesting, okay, quite a number of interesting um, examples provided inside here. Choose and pick which language of is your preference. To get the data, yes, definitely. Okay, Ashraf, to answer a question about obtaining the data by clicking and getting data into Power BI and Excel, definitely. You can actually leverage on the Azure storage. In fact, you can do both for Azure SQL and also Azure storage, blob storage as a source for your Power BI. Okay, so that is possible. Okay, so you have blob samples, data lake Gen 2 samples. So if you need to have a specific use case tested out, just look for the right ones that is provided here on this sample page that I've shared with you so that you can explore that one. Okay, and then if you want to look at the use cases, so that's the last portion of our presentation for today. How do I actually use it in my application? How do I actually use it in my application? What you need to do is there are some use cases made available. Okay, in our Azure Architecture Center, which pertains to the data storage or storage account usage as part of the requirement. Okay, so you have data storage coming into the picture. So you can go and look for storage and see which of these can be used in your use cases. Okay, so all of this architecture, how can we use this tool? Which tool is that, Thomas? In data science? Okay. For data science, if let's say if you're going to have Azure machine learning and you need to store your training data, and also Azure Databricks, if you're going to have your content, right? Let's say if you're going to make use of Azure machine learning, I don't have it with me, but see if I can quickly go on to create it. You will need to have a storage account. Okay, to store all your training data and your inference outcome. And also in Azure Databricks, it will serve as a means to store your content, your data content, so that it can be leveraged on by your Azure Databricks team, your team of data scientists. Okay, so how can we use this tool or this service in data science? So it will act as a storage for your Azure machine learning experiments, data, training data, and also in Azure Databricks as the source data as well. Okay, Thomas, I hope that answers your question. Okay, so you have a few architecture made available. So I strongly recommend that you look at some use cases which is close to what you're trying to achieve. For example, if you're, let's say you're working in medical line and they ask you to come up with a medical data storage, you can see what are the services that will come into the picture. And if you can see, there's a use of blob storage inside here for the purpose of having, right, for the purpose of having that data made available for analysis purpose, and data lake store for the purpose of machine learning usage. Okay, so they will guide you. Azure Cloud more of, it can support both ETL and ELT. It's up to you how you want to look at it. It can actually support both. Okay, so in terms of architecture, if you want to see whether if you want to make use of Azure ELT or ETL, both supported. It depends on how you configure it. Extract, load, and transform. So usually when we have high volume of data coming in, as what Ashraf mentioned just now, ELT will be in use because you don't want to hold back on the data flow. We capture it beforehand into a storage and then make that available for transformation. We load it first. Then when we are going to use the data, we'll transform and use it. So this is the alternative to ETL. That is the more traditional way. Okay, more traditional way because that one usually analytics work that we do previously is usually based on data warehouse where we capture the data, might massage the data and pump it into a data warehouse. So that is ETL, and this one is ELT. ELT will be more for those scenarios where you need to quickly capture the data and make it available. When the data is going to be used, that's when you transform and use it. Okay, great. So hopefully I've given you a quick overview of how data storage is going to be used. Apologies, I couldn't show you the demo um, in time, but you can download the storage sample, as I mentioned, depending on which language you're using, you can download the sample accordingly and use your Visual Studio Code. Just make sure you configure the storage account name, storage account key, the SAS, and also is emulated, you leave it as false so that you can actually leverage on those examples to try and experiment more on the usage. Okay, right. So if you want to get the resources later, I will share the slides with Suraj in PDF format so that you can have a look at it, or you can just get in touch with me on LinkedIn. So this is my LinkedIn. Basically, you can get in touch with me there, and I've shared quite a number of these contents as well on my LinkedIn page for you to leverage on. Okay, thanks, Chetan, for that LinkedIn link. Okay, right. So that's all that we have for today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll try to answer as long as the time permits. Yeah, the slides in terms of PDF format, I will give to Suraj and make that available on my LinkedIn as well. Okay, so hopefully all of you had you have a clearer picture of how to use the data storage here, right? Yeah, we'll get connected on LinkedIn and we take it further and hope to see you in future uh, Staya Dev sessions. They're doing a very good job of bringing a lot of speakers to you. So hope to see you in future sessions. Okay, have a great day.
Thank you, Ray, for the wonderful session. I hope it was easy for you to guys for to understand the topic and understand the basic concepts on the data platform. So if I don't think there is any more questions related to the session, and I have shared the attendance link for today's, and you should be receiving it, the certificate, after you fill the forms, and it might be take at least 1 to 2 minutes, and you should receive it in the email that you provided. And the recording of the today's session will be available on our YouTube channel, and I have shared the link to that channel in the chat box. And if you find today's session useful and interesting, please do join the community and participate in the upcoming sessions and trainings that we are doing. Thank you. I think there is no more questions.
Okay.
Mm,
Right. So thanks
in that case,
everyone. Thanks Suraj for that opportunity. So let's meet in the future sessions. See you all.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ray, for the session. Thank you all for
Bye.
joining.